All right, here we go. About to start the live stream. Okay. Let's see if that worked. I think it did. Okay, great. Welcome to the live stream, everyone. If you're watching this later, this recording will be on our YouTube channel in perpetuity. IAC members, I forgot to mention, you're very welcome to turn off your video on or off at any point, unless you all make a rule contrary to that today. So we're going to get started here. This is an introductory meeting. There's going to be a bunch of sort of introductory material, but there's also going to be a bit of sort of content time later on in the meeting for you all to get started on your on your work. Let's see. Let me pull up the agenda for the meeting actually first and just sort of go over that so that we're all on the same page about what's happening today. I should say I will be your facilitator for this meeting today, but Alex and I will trade off. Alex and I share the program co-director role at Healthy Democracy, and you may have talked to one or the other of us. We did one-on-one onboarding meetings with each of you for half an hour, all except for one person. I think Hector, we still have a meeting to do with you. If I'm wrong about that and we missed anyone, please let me know in the chat or afterwards as well. But I think we otherwise got everyone up to speed on sort of what the reminder of sort of what the idea of this group is. We'll hit on that just a bit later on today for folks who might be watching this later on. But yeah, welcome. Really excited to have you all here and to be sort of starting off this part of the process. We're really excited about this project and really grateful for all of your service in advance on this committee and hope it's a good time, genuinely. So let me again pull up the agenda here. As I think I mentioned, Alex is out of town today, so I am running the show by myself. So you'll have to bear with me as I pause and switch between screens. Here is the agenda today. And as I mentioned in my email just now, this agenda is not terribly important, I think. It's very just an introductory meeting, but for all future meetings, we'll have this agenda out as early as possible, certainly 5 or 6 days in advance, and public on the Petaluma website, which I think you all have via those onboarding meetings, but again is healthydemocracy.org/Petaluma. And I'll show you in just a second just where any links to the IAC materials are, although we're reshuffling the website and we'll continue to do so because there'll be a lot of information that will be up there eventually. So we want to make it readable. All right, back to the agenda here. So a little bit of just arrival and welcome. We'll have some time for introductions, aiming for a couple minutes per person to just introduce ourselves and relationship to the topic at hand. Brief overview of the process. We won't spend much time there because we've already given a number of public presentations on it. We've already introduced you all to the process. So we'll move quickly into group dynamics, talking about sort of some of the principles of deliberative processes and deciding what your group agreements will be, at least for the moment, always subject to change, and review specifically some of the different types of decision making that will happen in this committee. Again, up to change on your part, but this is sort of what we are starting with as a process for this committee. Then in the second half, or really in the last 30 minutes here of the meeting, or 20 minutes really, we will, and I think I may have done some math there wrong, did I? Nope, man, it looks all right. We'll talk about just the different types of presenters that will come to the panel, curated by you all, and have a bit of time to start to nominate or talk about potential types of introductory presenters. Now, this is very much just the first kind of like wetting your, what's the word? Dipping your toes in on this topic. You'll have all this next week and the meeting next week to continue to do this. And then there will be a lot of debate on this topic the following week. So this is just the very sort of first glance at this. All right. With that, let me, as promised, show you the website. And you know what, actually, maybe let me not do that since things might be moving. So let me cancel that for the moment. We'll come back to that. I'll put the website in chat though, just as a reminder when we get a second. Let's start off with some introductions just to sort of go around. And again, if we can keep this to a couple of minutes, that'll be helpful. Since there are 14 members of this committee, and just your name, your organization. If you know what sort of category you were nominated, your organization was nominated to represent, then mention that as well. If not, no worries, I can help out with that. And what your relationship is to this topic or to the city of Petaluma. All right, so to the fairgrounds or to the city. All right, let's get started. Who would like to start for me or for us? Let's go with Anna. Is it Anna or Anna?
Anna.
Awesome. Go for it.
Either way, it's fine. Hi, everyone. I see some faces that I know. My name is Anna Cordova. I work at the Petaluma Family Resource Center at McDowell School. And I'm confused. I'm looking at the table and I'm confused if it is housing or education. So.
Okay, I'll clear that up in just a second. But what is your relation to this, to the fairgrounds or to this topic?
I'm interested in helping, and also because I work at the Family Resource Center.
Got it. All right. And let's see. Let's. Well, I'll just pass it around my screen here. Let's go to Onita. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I'm Onita Pellegrini. I'm the CEO for the Petaluma Chamber of Commerce. I've been doing that for about 26 years now. I'm one of the lucky people that was born and raised in Petaluma, and my relationship with the fair grounds and all is that I've been there as a child, been there as an adult, you know, familiar with both the city's lease with the fair and the fair to the community.
Awesome. Let's carry on with, I forgot to introduce my colleague, Tiffany, who's an intern with us this summer or this spring, who's going to be helping us out. Thanks so much, Tiffany. She's sort of going to be helping with some of the administration for this committee and also on these meetings. So, hey, Tiffany. Awesome. Let's go to Katie.
I'm in a different order on my screen. My name's Katie Lundy. I'm a teacher at Liberty School District in Petaluma, sort of on the outskirts of the actual city. As far as my relationship to the Sonoma Marin Fairgrounds, I was an exhibitor there for many, many years, and then have worked there for many, many years as well.
My Zoom escaped me on a different screen. Let's go to Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark Scott. I'm with North Bay Animal Services. Our relationship to the fairgrounds is obviously we've had a big animal relationship with them, and during evacuations and emergency services is I think our category that we're under. So that's our relationship.
Awesome. This may go faster than expected. Christy.
Hi, my name is Christy. I'm the CEO of the Sonoma Marin Fairgrounds. So I feel like my connection goes without saying, but I work here and manage the grounds and look forward to working with you all.
Awesome, thanks. And Marion.
Yeah, my name is Marion Walker. I've lived in Petaluma for 34 years. I'm involved with an organization for the last 30 years called 100 Black Men of Sonoma County. We, over the past, were affiliated with the Community Baptist Church up in Santa Rosa. Some of our activities have been giving out food on Thanksgiving and Christmas. We've also sponsored basketball teams at the Boys and Girls Club in Petaluma, and as well as some other social activities that we've been involved in. I live in the unincorporated area of Petaluma. Many of my neighbors are ranchers, and I raised my kids here. We go to the fairgrounds for the fair and so on and so forth. So that's my exposure and why I'm concerned.
Awesome, thanks very much. And it sounds like there's maybe just a slight echo in your audio, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure it out.
Fair enough, no worries. Let's go to Jerry.
Hello, my name is Jerry Wilkinson. I'm with the Petaluma Wheelman Cycle Club, and the category I was selected in, I guess, is active transportation. I'm also a member of the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee, and my wife and I and 2 daughters have been here 30 some odd years. I don't know the exact number. It's been a long time. And I think my goal here, my interest here is we're looking at safe streets, connected streets. Certainly climate is a major concern. And the city does have the carbon neutral by 2030 goal. And I think that should be a very important part. There's a lot of things that need to be considered in this, but those are right now, I think, the introductory comments I'd like to make. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, let's go on to Diana.
Hi, my name is Diana Spalding. I'm the manager of the Petaluma Regional Library. So as a neighbor to the Petaluma Fairgrounds, that's my body representing the group of neighbors. The library interacts with the fairgrounds as a neighbor in a number of ways. We only have about 20 parking spaces for the public on Fairgrounds Drive. So we're well aware that our overflow parking is at the fairgrounds parking lot. Personally, I've lived in Petaluma for 22 years and raised a couple of kids here, both young adults now. And for a number of years, they attended Live Oak Charter School, which is a tenant at the fairgrounds. So I'm pretty familiar with some of the buildings there. When the Healthy Democracy was advertising for people to be on the IAC, they mentioned that they wanted fair and balanced presenters and information, and libraries are all about fair and balanced information. So that's why I volunteered.
All right, thanks, Diana, appreciate it. Kimberly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kim Arns, and I am a teacher, an agriculture teacher at Petaluma High School. I've lived in the Petaluma area for the last 44 years. I was brought here by my parents in the first upswing, I think, in the 70s, when Petaluma was expanding a little bit on the west side. So I've lived here a long time. I am part of the agriculture sector that was selected for the committee. And I think sort of my role and my students' role obviously is as users of the fairgrounds, but I also think that we are liaisons between what agriculture offers in our community and in our state to the public. Our kids participate in a lot of different ways as part of fairgrounds projects. Obviously, they exhibit livestock. We have a tremendous exhibit of the agricultural mechanics department. So in the skill or the still exhibits, so some career-based learning happening at school that then is exhibited at the fair. And we help with livestock evacuations for different fire activities that have occurred in the last several years. And there's at least a couple of tenants on the fairgrounds who are family connections to our students, current and past students. So I'm interested in being able to provide an avenue for those types of folks to have some input about the fairgrounds and its future. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Let's go on to Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Edminster. I'm representing Climate Action Petaluma, and the category is environmental and climate groups. And that's very definitely the hat I wear. Most of my waking hours is climate stuff. I work in the building sector, reducing climate-related energy use and emissions. Do a lot of work in both building industry education and some consumer education about the role buildings play in climate. And I'm really excited about the potential for the fairgrounds to both exhibit and embody climate solutions for Petaluma and really help take the town into the 21st, well into the 21st century and beyond. So thank you.
Awesome. And I think unless I've missed someone, we have Shannon.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
I was muted. Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, sorry. I am here representing a nonprofit category with Petaluma Valley Rotary. I'm also the general manager of Hotel Petaluma in downtown. I'm a longtime agricultural fair enthusiast and former employee of Western Fairs, or intern rather, of Western Fairs Association. So I've worked at several fairs throughout the state, including the State Fair, Nevada County, Sonoma County, and Sonoma Marin. And then I'm also currently on the board of the Friends of the Sonoma Marin Fairgrounds, which is a nonprofit that exists to advocate, educate, and fundraise for the fairgrounds.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Shannon. Fantastic. Very awesome. Wonderful to have you all here. And thank you again. Again, anybody, let's see, who is not here, we'll be following up with, but I think, do we have everyone? I actually forgot to count. I think we actually do. No, I'm sorry. We are missing the representative of the city, if not someone else. In any case, we'll follow up with folks that we are missing and encourage them to watch the recording of this meeting, and we'll do so for future meetings. As a reminder, during your onboarding sessions, you nominated an alternate for the days when if you couldn't be here. So if you know you can't be here, please let us know, but also let that alternate know and give them the information to be here. But as I mentioned, at least to the folks that I talked to, these meetings will sort of cascade one into the next. So if it's possible for you to be here for every meeting, that will make hopefully your life and my life easier. And thank you very much, Diana. Appreciate that. Oh, Hector and Jonathan as well. And it's Ingrid, I think, from this city, if I remember right. Awesome. Thanks very much. Let's see. So I think we're back on schedule again, which is wonderful. And I'm just going to give a brief sort of overview of where we are right now in the process. This is a very busy week for us because not only is this the first meeting of the IAC, and thank goodness it's just sort of an introduction, but it's also the week when the panel is being selected. So if you remember, there are these two bodies, the IAC, which is providing information, to the panel, which is lottery selected from the general public on a number of different factors, age and gender and race and ethnicity, et cetera. And that selection is going to happen on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Live streamed. And there's a big note on that on the project website again, which I'll put in chat here. And I think everyone probably has from the onboarding sessions, but it's just healthydemocracy.org/Petaluma, or you can get to it through the menus on our webpage. So check that out. There will be a couple little videos kind of explaining how it works, and we will actually draw literal numbers to get the panel that will be selected. So that's kind of exciting. I'm going to share my screen here for just a moment to share with you a diagram that we haven't used in a couple of months, actually, but it seemed appropriate for the current moment because we've hit a couple of these milestones already. Let me do that. Hopefully you can see my screen share there. Okay, super. So this is sort of our diagram of the stakeholder and community inputs that are happening in this process before the panel is actually seated. Yeah, it should say actually seated because the panel selection is included here. And we've already been through a few of these things. This initial stakeholder conversations. We've talked to quite a number of different folks across the city, not just you all, but many other folks from other organizations, certainly not all organizations, but we tried to sort of get a smattering of folks across the city. We are not going to be bringing information from those meetings, and we were clear at those meetings that that's not our role, but we still need a sense of sort of what the political environment is like, and sort of what we're walking into. So we've been doing a number of those meetings. Obviously, we formed this committee that had its own little sort of mini lottery selection process from within these 12 different categories of stakeholders, plus the fair and the city. Then we sent out a letter to, as it turned out, 10,000 randomly selected residential addresses across the city of Petaluma. Some of you may have even gotten that letter, and folks responded. The deadline has just passed for that yesterday to respond online. We're still getting some mail in for folks who mailed back their entries, and getting all of that into a big spreadsheet, and that will be the source for the lottery selection of the panel on Wednesday. In the meantime, we've started to put out, created this project website and put out a few bits and pieces on social media, but nothing like what will be coming up in this project, hopefully, to tell the story of the project and hopefully help the panel really tell its own story. We don't want to tell it for it. The IAC, now we're down here, has just started to meet weekly as of today, hooray, and on through the rest of April and May, with one meeting also in July as sort of a wrap-up debrief, to start to think about initial presenters and additional presenters that the panel may want to consider. This committee is responsible for the vast majority of information coming into the process, so it is a big responsibility, and really grateful again for all of you taking part in this. I mentioned the lottery that's happening on Wednesday, and there will also be equity-based outreach, so it'll be parallel, that will be another sort of informational input directly into the panel. All right, so as for this, let me actually just stop right there and make sure that, see if anybody has any questions about the general process. I think you've probably already all heard this a couple of times. Apologies, but also, for anybody watching this, any questions? And you're welcome to raise your hand like this, but also feel free to use the raise hand feature, which is down. Usually it's down in the reactions button in the bottom of Zoom. Okay, seeing nothing. Yeah, go for it, Jerry.
Did I understand you correctly that we would consider additional IAC panel members as well?
Members for this group? No. So this group is formed, the 14 are the 14 that have been selected onto this committee, unless a whole organization drops out, and then we'll cross that bridge, but hopefully, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But yeah. All right, thanks. So a little bit about sort of the trajectory of this committee itself. And again, I think you've gotten some of this in these onboarding meetings, so forgive me. But there's a number of different things this group is responsible for. This initial batch of presenters that will be providing all the information to the panel in its first weekend, which is May 14th through 16th. And by the way, I'm not sure if it's up there yet, but the dates for the panel, I know that some of you were still asking about that, and that wasn't on the project website yet as of the end of last week. So we'll make sure that's available for folks who may want to attend. All the panel sessions are open to the public, as you know, I think. So anyway, that first weekend of the panel, May 14, 15, 16, is curated entirely by you, or mostly by you, with the introductory sort of processy stuff from us. This whole, let's see, well, I'll get there in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then whatever presenters don't get selected to that introductory weekend, or just other folks go on to this huge menu, and the panel can select for that, from that for its additional presenters later on in the process. You'll also be reviewing the process and evaluating, giving feedback and high-level direction to us on the panel's process for the first phase of its process. That is the information gathering phase. So we'll get to that in a few weeks. And there's one last thing, which is to provide a short statement. Each of you will have a chance to speak directly to the panel. And that also sort of ties into the process decisions. You all will also be able to decide whether what we have sort of preloaded as information gathering process is the process that you want to move forward. So you may decide that we should do other things, and that will be up to this committee as well. So we'll all get to that later. The first order of business for this committee is going to be the presenters. And that's because we need to know who the folks are that we need to start inviting to that first weekend. So that is certainly the first and most important job of this committee. Right, so we'll get to that. I hope that is all just duplicate information to what you have already heard, but if not, please raise your hand and make sure that everybody's on the same page there. And we'll also be, as I mentioned, sort of looking further in advance in these IAC meetings, so you're not surprised by anything that's coming up. And actually, at the end of this meeting, I'll review what's happening at the next meeting as well. Okay, with that, let me go on to the next agenda item here. But again, feel free to raise your hand with any questions or comments. All right, seeing none, let's carry on here. Get back to sharing my screen. There we go. Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to review at this meeting is just sort of some of the ideas behind this type of democratic activity. And by this type, I mean the panels process mainly. But this group, over the years, we have sort of envisioned, envisioned all the other processes within all the other groups involved in a process, including ourselves, and we try to apply these things internally to our own organization as hopefully following some of the same ideas that are central to the sort of theory of deliberative democracy. So I wanted to share some of that theory with you now. And then we'll talk about some sort of basic discussion guidelines for this group that you will all get to decide on, which is important, maybe not for today, but for future meetings when if things get a little bit more contentious and that kind of thing. You've probably done this in other groups. This is not rocket science sort of stuff. But the ideas behind deliberation are, of course, high quality deliberation. We're not going to be working so much in rotating small groups. This is a fairly large group of 14 people. And let us know if you would really like to do some of deliberative aspects in small groups. We could split this group into threes and that kind of thing, but we're not planning that as of right now. That could change. Given our limited time, we think we probably need to meet with this group as a whole, large as it may be. But one of the ideas in the panel processes is that they do a lot of work in pairs, threes, fours, fives, sixes, because that's where folks get the most opportunity to really engage with each other and with the content that they're working on. These processes are professionally moderated by trained moderators that hopefully ensure respectful and balanced participation. The processes are designed to encourage collaboration, critical thinking, well-informed decisions, sometimes through really obvious means in the process, sometimes through not so obvious means. In one really big way, the theory behind starting with a really robust kind of information gathering phase, which is the one, just sort of the part of the process that you all are so essential for, is for the panel to build some level of camaraderie around just gathering information before they get down to sort of, thinking about the more political or potentially divisive issues involved, to just at least have some experience together trying to gather the best quality information they can. And usually that alone is a great way that the panel kind of builds cohesion. And I don't know that we'll be able to do as much of that on this group because we have to move quickly into some decision making about these presenters, but we certainly have that in mind. And all right, the fourth thing here is that process staff are impartial to content. You've heard that from us a million times, but we try really hard to design these processes irrespective of whatever the topic is, design it for sort of the general level of complexity or the type of situation. And we don't want to touch content with a 10-foot pole, which is the reason why you all are here. In a typical public engagement process, as you probably know, usually the outside consultants or the city are involved in a lot of information curation, producing briefing documents or fact sheets, or inviting certain presenters and sort of handpicking folks onto the panel itself, of course. But all of those things are very much verboten for us. We don't want anything to do with that. We want to try to create a body, you, that can do most of that, and then the panel to sort of take over at some point and fill in the gaps. And the panel actually in the end ends up doing a ton of its own kind of content sourcing or information sourcing, and of course does all of the generation of the final products. You all are sort of the jump start to that process in a big way, and exist because of this sort of desire on our part to be impartial and be 100% the process people and 0% anything else. Next section. Oh yeah, does somebody have a question? Sorry, I'm looking at my thing here, so please jump in. Oh, maybe it was just somebody whose mic was on. All right, that's perfectly fine. Great. But do feel free to jump in.
Lynn?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's Diana. I think we have somebody who joined the meeting. I think Jonathan joined the meeting.
Oh, fantastic. Welcome, Jonathan. Thank you very much for noticing that. I really appreciate that. Looking at my screen here.
I did. Thank you. Sorry I was late.
No worries at all. And Hector actually might be a little bit late as well. I forgot to mention that. A work commitment came up emergency last minute. John, I wonder if you'd be willing to quickly introduce yourself, just your name and organization and what your relationship is to this topic and the fairgrounds.
Yeah, hi. My name is Jonathan Ganley. I am the president, have been for 3 or 4 years of Petaluma National Little League. So we're a 501c nonprofit in Petaluma. There's 2 other little leagues in Petaluma, and I will kind of try to represent all of Little League for Petaluma since they weren't selected. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm not a native Petaluman, but since 2014, and I plan on making it our forever place, town, home. So I would like to be involved.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Mhm.
All
Yep.
right, let me head back to my slide here. And thanks so much for noticing that. Appreciate that a lot. So the next piece here is that reports the sort of actionable policy recommendations. Certainly this group has some deliverables that you know about, these initial presenters, this menu of presenters, and direct statements to the panel from you all. The panel has its own deliverables, its reports that it will write in its own words, never edited by staff, us, or anybody else, that it will be presenting to the Fair Board and the city at the end of this process. And actually will be releasing a report, 2 reports before the end of the process as well, actually. As with the panel, the reports that come out of this process, mainly thinking of that big menu of potential presenters that you produce, will be prioritized. And that is true for the panel's reports as well. We love to use prioritization rather than sort of up-down voting, so that dissenting views are never lost, so that there doesn't have to be sort of a separate process to create sort of a minority report or something like that, because dissenting views are right there in the report. It's just some things may rise to the top and some things may not, but it doesn't mean that those voices that aren't in the majority aren't also important to be heard. In this case, for those presenters who may not be supported by the majority, it's important for the panel to see those, and they will be working. The process is heavily designed to invite them to do gaps analysis several times over. We'll be doing that here too, to make sure that there aren't voices that are left out, that even voices that may be in the minority are still making it into the conversation because they may have something really important to contribute. These processes are built to hopefully help the panel, in this case you all, find consensus but not force it. I'll get to this in a second when we talk about voting methods or decision-making methods. And yeah, I mentioned in the panelists' own words, that'll be true for you all as well. When you submit ideas for presenters and what their affiliation is, and also why you think they're important for the panel to hear from, that will be in your words, not edited by us. So if you make a typo, the typo will be there in the final version. It doesn't always look as clean as if it's nicely spiffed up by a consulting firm, but we think that it is more important that there is some level of trust there, that absolutely nothing has been deleted or changed. So that's the position we take on that. These processes are also based on detailed process designs. Today, we're a bit loose, but in the future, we'll have to structure these pretty tightly in order to get done what we need to get done. These processes are custom designed by HD partners, process advisors. We have a group of process advisors, some previous panelists from other projects, previous partners from other projects, previous moderators from other projects who won't be participating in this process, but are there sort of behind the scenes to give us advice. We also are part of a network called Democracy R&D that's in, I think, 29 countries across the globe. And we bring in some of those folks who have experience that we don't in order to advise us on these processes. So hopefully their advice makes it through us into the process, and that it's not that we won't make mistakes. We certainly will, and we'll hopefully be very transparent when we do. But hopefully we make fewer mistakes every time, and things evolve over time to be just a little bit better. This IAC process is an iteration. It is a big step from what we did the last time, which was a big step from the last time. And I'm sure the next one will take a big step. So that's the reason for that meeting in July, is we really value your feedback at that point, but all the way along the way, please reach out directly to myself and also Alex. Sort of consider us a pair when you reach out to us, just so nothing gets lost. Our emails, as you know, are just lynn@healthydemocracy.org and alex@healthydemocracy.org. And they'll also get to us if you email the general account info at, or do it through the website. It all eventually filters down to us. And yeah, based on 40 plus years of international research, this kind of process was first devised in the United States and in Germany sort of simultaneously about 50 years ago. And there've been sort of little improvements on it ever since, again, with lots of improvements still to happen. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, before actually we get to the sort of discussion guidelines, excuse me, I want to talk a little bit more in detail, as I promised the folks that I talked to in onboarding, just about the types of decisions that the IAC will be making. They fall into kind of two different categories, and I'm going to describe how they work. And once again, this is our sort of preloaded process. If this is really objectionable to this committee, this can be changed. But hopefully this, due to sort of the timing of getting the committee started, that hopefully this is more or less amenable, but please let me know if it's not. So there's sort of two different types of decisions here that we see this group having to make. And these aren't like official titles for these or anything. I just sort of came up with titles for them today, actually, because they didn't have names as we've previously talked about them. The first one is sort of an aim for consensus type of decision making. So the idea here is to aim for consensus. If we can get consensus, amazing. If not, that's okay. We don't have time to sort of we don't all have the will to sort of work toward absolute consensus all the time. That may not be possible sometimes. So then we'll go to consensus -1, consensus -2. That is sort of, we need a supermajority. We'll try for as much consensus as possible. And I described to some of you in the onboarding, but I'll describe here that as part of that prioritization process, when we do voting, we'll be using a 4-point scale of recommend, support, tolerate, and cannot support. And we'll aim to get at least tolerate for the vast majority of folks that this panel will, this committee will bring to the process in that first weekend of the panel's process, May 14th, 15th, 16th. As you can see here, that's the first bullet point. Those introductory presenters, we'll use this to sort of, because the idea here is to get as much agreement around those initial presenters as possible, to have those folks be folks who this diverse group of stakeholders can agree on as much as possible, as providing good quality, relatively unbiased. As we know that bias is a thing that is natural and everyone has it, but as much of a sort of balanced view on this topic as possible. Or you may all decide to, hey, we need somebody that has a little bit more of opinion from this angle, more of opinion from this angle, more of an opinion from that angle, and bring those folks in together and say, okay, we're going to sort of agree that those kind of folks need to come in and provide some background to the panel. The other type of decisions that might use this decision making would be process decisions. Obviously, we want this group to agree as much as possible on high-level process decisions that we're going to introduce sort of an idea of what our proposal is for the first part of the panel's process, and then you all will get to tell us what you think about that and give us direction, sort of like our board of directors for this part of the process, basically. So that's sort of high-level process decisions. The other thing here is, any other decisions or any additional information that are sent to the panel. Kim, I see you have a hand up. And so this might include, maybe at some point in your deliberations, you all say, this is great, we have all these presenters and we're each going to say these, have these statements and et cetera. But we also think that blank, the first 5 pages of blank report are just absolutely essential for the panel to get. And we will say, okay, let's be very careful about, sort of overwhelming the panel with tons of written information. But you know what? You all have decision-making power over what information the panel gets. And if you all decide that the panel should get that information, then they'll get that information. Kim, go ahead.
I'm just curious how or when we should present our list of potential presenters to you and to Alex. I'm just looking at some notes I'm taking over here, and as different groups occur to me, I'm writing it down so I don't forget anybody, but I don't know how to communicate that list to you.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that piece a couple steps ago. Wonderful. Yes. So today we're just going to have a very brief, kind of 15-minute kind of go around on what some of our what your initial thoughts are for these sort of introductory folks. But I will be sending out a form, a Google form, a little online place where you can introduce folks that you have thought of over the next week. And then there will be a final opportunity to do that at next week's meeting. Most of the meeting will be devoted to getting more names, more organizations. You don't incidentally have to know the name of the person that you want. If you know an organization or a type of organization even that you want to make it, on to potentially to present to the panel, then that's great. So yeah, via that form online and then also at next week's meeting. And something else I was going to say there, but I think I forgot. All right, let's carry on here. Anybody else with their hand up? I think I saw Kim's, but okay, great. So the other. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So do I understand this correctly? We create just a list of people or organizations that we might like to include as presenters. Is there any body of information that would go with that list, and then what happens with this list, which I'm assuming is going to be rather large, at least initially? How is that process? How does that process work?
Absolutely, yes. So what you will see when you get this form is it'd be very simple. It'd be name, organization name, and a word-limited little, sort of one sentence worth of why you think it's important the panel hear from this person. So that is your opportunity to speak directly to your fellow IAC members, but also eventually directly to the panel about why this person is important for them to hear from, because maybe that person gets decided by the IAC here to present to the panel that first weekend, May 14, 15, 16, but maybe they don't make that cut. Well, everybody that doesn't make that cut still makes it onto the menu that goes to the panel, and you're right, that could be very long. In our last process, which was much smaller than this one, there were 57 different names on that list. We'll take some time to categorize them into different categories, to add additional rationales about why that person may be a good candidate, and eventually you all will vote that sort of recommend, support, tolerate, can't support. Those votes will make it onto next to each nominee's name. So the panel, when they're looking at that list, yes, that is a massive amount of work, but they will have some guide. They'll be able to see, okay, we heard from these X number of people, May 14, 15, 16, but the IAC, thinks, here were some folks that didn't quite make the cut. Here are some folks where the IAC seems to be really divided on that person. That's interesting. I wonder why that was. They'll be able to look on there and look for those minority voices, as you said, as I mentioned earlier, sorry, or, sort of other gaps that they may need to fill. I hope that answers that question. So yeah, as part of the nomination process, you'll get a chance to say why the person's important.
So the selection process will be based on that short little description that is provided on that Google form.
That's right. Yes. 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 But there will also be discussion. There will be an entire meeting, the third meeting of this group in 2 weeks' time, that will be all about you all talking to each other about what you think the most important folks for the panel to hear from are. I saw Shannon's hand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to revisit just briefly, and I may be jumping ahead in your agenda, but your comment about hopefully finding unbiased presenters concerns me a little bit. I wouldn't want our committee to shy away, because as I think we all know, this is not going to be a topic where there are unbiased presenters. I'm pretty sure we're going to have strong opinions on both sides of the fence. And I think we all understand, yes, we want all those voices there, but I wouldn't want anyone to shy away from recommending a presenter who has a biased viewpoint, because I think 99% of them are going to have that. So could you comfort us a little bit about that? And that's not going to destroy your process having, you know, because I understand your point where we as a committee would just say, look, we understand this is you know, has a big division. We want to make sure all the voices are heard, but we understand there's going to be bias on both sides.
Yeah, sorry, I really should have left that part out, because it's something that we don't say in our processes anymore. We don't use the word unbiased or that kind of thing, because it's ridiculous. Everyone has biases. We need to accept them, acknowledge them, and acknowledge that we are all human. And hopefully there's enough diversity in the room, there's enough different viewpoints in the room that the panel can sort of pick through those different biases to get the information it needs, get the different viewpoints it needs. So yes, I should have left that out. Everyone comes with their biases. You're absolutely right. It's sort of old language from our world, from an old school way of thinking about deliberative processes that was much more sort of like, you know, can we get the most objective information, that we have certainly moved away from, and there are just little bits there that are hanging in my vocabulary and thinking. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, that bias is a natural part of processes, and that. You know, yes, your job is to provide a diverse view to the panel of what the situation is. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Catching me on one of those little things that Alex would be very disappointed that I said that. So let's see. The last thing here. The other sort of type of decision here are power, I'm calling them power of one decisions. Maybe somebody, if you have better names for these things, by the way, please let me know. I'm sure, you know, there is a better name, but the idea here is that each and every IAC member has individual power to do certain things. You don't need the approval of the rest of this committee in order to do certain things. And one of those is to get a presenter onto the presenter menu. There's no vetting, there's no filter, there's no nothing. You nominate a person, you can nominate as many people as you want, they get onto the menu, period. The other piece here, actually, that there should be another bullet point here, is you speaking directly to the panel. Right now, as we mentioned in onboarding, we have that taking the form of a little statement that each of you write that goes directly to the panel, so that at the very minimum, when the panel is sitting down that first weekend, they have 14 different views in front of them of what you all think the situation is from your own words. And of course, those will be word limited. And that process, though, will be up for your decision making. So you can decide, no, actually, we'd each like a little bit more space there, or we'd like to each present to the panel for 2 minutes, or whatever it is. We can cross that bridge in a few weeks. But that's the other thing that's missing at the bottom of this list here, that each of you will have some kind of opportunity to speak or write individually to the panel, whatever it is you want to say to them. Okay, let me stop sharing this screen here. Shannon, you still have your hand up, but I think is that from the last comment?
Yes, sorry, I don't have a current hand up.
Okay, awesome, no worries.
Lower hand, sorry.
I know Zoom is not good. You'd think it would lower it automatically, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. All right, any other thoughts on this before I move onward here? All right, super. We'll come back to that as well. We'll go over the voting procedure for this first round of sort of decision making next week as well. Diana, go ahead.
Thanks. I want to come back to diversity of opinion and bias for just a minute. And I don't know if this is a long or short discussion or be part of a future meeting, but to talk about quality of information and to talk about authority of information and to talk about fact versus opinion.
I think that fits really well into the agenda item for just a little bit later on. So if you can hold on for just a minute, we'll come back to sort of that general conversation about the types of folks that might present to the panel. That's sort of the objective for the last 20 minutes of the meeting today. So hold on to that. Appreciate that. All right, let's see. Let's go to the sort of group agreements. I'm going to share my screen again here. All right, there will not be nearly so much talking from us at future of these meetings. This is just, as you can probably understand, there is some introductory stuff here. So this is exactly the same thing that the panel will see. Well, this might get updated in the next month and a half, but or month or so. But this is the current version of our sort of stock group agreements. But excuse me. But the panel will get an opportunity to amend and add to these agreements, and so will you. You won't have as much, we haven't sort of budgeted as much time to do it as the panel will have, but I'm wondering if we could just take a couple of minutes for everybody to look at this. I hope this is large enough for everyone to see. Maybe let me make it a little bit larger here to help with that. I think I can do that. Let's see here. Is that better? Hopefully that's better. Let's just take a couple of minutes to read through, especially the sort of the bolded items here. And let me know if you have thoughts, questions, comments, or additions to this list, or if you disagree with anything on here. All right, feel free to keep reading here or looking at this page, but if anybody has additions, comments, disagreements, etc., or as Shannon has done here, you're very welcome, or I think Anita as well now. If you'd like to use the little thumbs up icon, it's under reactions as well. You can give it a thumbs up if you'd like. That's wonderful. I think I've seen thumbs up from just about everybody, actually, which is amazing. Wow, you must all be really practiced at using Zoom. Usually we can't do that kind of thing, but I guess we are at this point in the pandemic where everyone has been using Zoom so much that we're all we know where the thumbs up is, which appreciate that. All right, I don't see any hands raised, but let me know, indeed, if anybody has any comments about that, additions, subtractions, etc., that you want to suggest in the future. That is a living list and can always come back to that at any point. Feel free also to refer to that list, and I will send that out to you all as well. If that applies to us as well, I should say, and the panel, that will apply to the panel, or the list that they agree to, plus anybody who speaks to the panel, folks in the audience, staff, et cetera, et cetera. Jerry, you've put the X mark. Just playing around, or do you disagree with something? Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, I think.
I'm trying to get rid of the thumb.
Oh, it goes away, I think, automatically after a certain amount of time, doesn't it?
And I'm afraid to touch the X mark.
It should go away, I think, after a certain amount. I think it's only the hand raise that stays there forever, if I remember right. Well, somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Ignore the X mark.
Okay, all right, cool, thanks. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks for that. That was really, really straightforward. Appreciate that. All right. Let me get back to my agenda here. I think we're right on time. But I just want to make extra sure that that is the case. Yes, we're right on time. Oh my gosh, amazing. All right, so moving into the second part of the agenda here, and just a sort of introduction. I've already really given this introduction, so we can move straight into a little bit of discussion. This will be just a loose sort of brainstorm or discussion, as we've envisioned it, of just potential types of introductory presenters, or Diana, you started to mention something about the sort of the nature of good quality information and that kind of thing. So would love to hear more discussion about that. And please raise your hands, use the raise hand feature if you can. I'll be taking notes here in the background, but I don't want to hog up the whole screen unless somebody would like me to take notes on screen, in which I will. But otherwise, I'll just be taking notes in the background and provide that all to you after the fact. Yeah, this is an open time for open discussion to just start the conversation about what types of presenters or types of information you feel like would be really beneficial in this opening weekend of the panel, May 14, 15, 16, right off the bat, what they should hear from. Let's put aside, folks who you think, okay, this is maybe a little bit more of a niche view or niche kind of expertise that may be good for the panel to hear from, but okay, maybe it should just go onto the menu. Let's leave that to the side for a moment and talk most especially about the folks that you think should present to the panel right off the bat, good quality background information for the panel to hear. And I see Shannon's hand up. Diana asked just really quick, how many hours of presentations in the opening weekend? This will be up to your decision-making. When we talk about the process, we will come with a recommendation or maybe several different options, and it will be up to this committee to decide. So that will influence how many actual presenters make it into that first weekend. But just as a guide, that first weekend will be about 21 hours of total work time for the panel, 8-hour days, 3 days in a row, minus break times and lunch times. But a lot of that time we also need to take for introductory material, for the panelists to get to know each other, to talk about their own lived experience, to just be introduced to this kind of process, because it's a pretty new environment, and folks obviously are lottery selected from the general public, so they may have never experienced anything like a group process like this before. So there is some sort of training and just getting used to this kind of environment. So it can't be just sort of a fire hose of information all the time. But in there will be substantial time for presentations. Okay, and Diana, I know you had that comment a little bit earlier. Maybe let's come back to you. Raise your hand if you want to make it again, but let's go to Shannon first to just start things off here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my first thought was that a historical context of some kind, and not only locally, but statewide, because the history of California agricultural fairs and in the whole country is vast and deep and interesting. And so, yeah, my first thought was like somebody from, any level of our city, county, state fair kind of background, someone knowledgeable about that. And I know we've got local historians, but somebody outside of even the local viewpoint might be interesting for people that don't have that background knowledge of agricultural fairs in the state.
Right. Thanks very much. Feverishly taking notes back here. I'll let you all know if I need a pause in order to take notes. Let's see. That's exactly the kind of comment that we were thinking of for this introductory just sort of throwing something out as an idea of the type of person or type of information you might want to see. Onita.
I would just like to have someone present what can be done with the land if there is restrictions on it. I know there's been lots of different talk about what people would like to see there, but there has to be some zoning issues. There has to be, the fact that it's a park. I'd like to see someone who has the knowledge of those items as a presenter.
All right. Got it. Let's see. Oh, fantastic. Lots of hands. It goes in order here, thankfully. So, Marion. And I think you're on mute, Marion.
In reading the Argus issue, it seems like the car races in the evening are going to be a significant issue in terms of repurposing the fairgrounds. I think we need to have some spokesman from the auto group so that we can get a sense of how important that is. There's an organization called Cruising the Boulevard, which sponsors the American Graffiti Car Show in Petaluma every year. They've also helped to save the auto shop program at Petaluma High School. Some of their members have some history with that racetrack, and I think they need to be represented in the process. So I would suggest that they be contacted and that they be one of the presenters.
I'm on mute now. Sorry about that. Let's go to Anne.
Wearing my hat for the climate community, I think I'd like to see someone speak about the ways in which land use decisions influence a city's ability to meet its climate goals.
Just a sec, let me get that down. Okay. All right, anything else there? Okay, great. Kim?
Thank you. I think just from some of the comments that I've heard already, there's going to be overlap in some of our suggestions in terms of presenters to the committee. For example, Marion had mentioned Cruising the Boulevard North and the auto shop program, both of which are sort of on my list as well. And I think in addition to the agriculture component, I would also like to speak about or have someone discuss the youth in our community and their role in accessing and using the fairgrounds. So I have several different student organizations specific to Petaluma High because that's what I'm most familiar with. But as a longtime resident of our community, there is not a lot for students to do that is productive and healthy in our community. And I think it would be remiss of us to leave them out of this conversation. So student leadership, I think, would be an important component of this conversation.
Let me get that down here. All right, awesome. And let's see, let's go Diana. I think Onita, your hand is still up from earlier, I believe. Diana.
Thanks. I haven't been in touch with any of the other neighbors, so I'm going to make this comment from a sort of a more holistic viewpoint. In terms of planning decisions for Petaluma, I've been really impressed with the information and the perspective that the Urban Chat Know Before You Grow group presents. Seems to be all sides of an issue and looking really towards the future.
All right, let me get that down here just a moment. My computer. Okay, I think I've got that. All right, I see Jerry.
Thank you. I would like to, some of the components that have been mentioned, I think should be inclusive. Some historical, certainly. I think really it should be a large overview of what the fairgrounds is, perhaps a bit of how it got to be where it is, and what it can become. And we are indeed at a crossroads, and the importance of the decision that this panel is going to be made is very, very large. Anne mentioned the climate issues, and that's pending over everybody. So this is a very, very large decision. And I think the significance and the potential impact of what this panel is about to recommend needs to be stressed, and all these, some of these components mentioned have to be included. What is the impact of this decision? And that's what I think has to be stressed to the panel at their initial meeting. After that, you can have all these different components brought forth, but I think that the larger picture needs to be stressed at the initial meeting. Thank you.
All right. Okay, I think I've got that. Katie.
I'm sure this will be on many people's list, but the current nonprofit or vendors or schools that currently use the fairgrounds, just hearing why they chose the fairgrounds and what its importance is to them, and if it wasn't there, what would happen to them. And then also
actually, hold on just a second, let me get that down. Sorry. No worries. Sometimes I'm faster than others. Okay, go ahead.
And the Office of Emergency Services, maybe, because it is used as an evacuation site, and how they use it, and the impact it has on them with keeping it, and also if it were to go away.
Just a sec. Okay. My computer is getting toward the end of its day and is randomly stalling a little bit here and there. I think I've got it. All right. I see. Let's see. Marion, I see you again. I want to try to get in as many new folks as possible, just given our limited time. Can I come back to you in just a second and go down the list to anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak yet? I think, John, you haven't said anything yet, so if I can go to you first.
Okay, thank you. I would agree with Shannon, Jerry, and what Marion said as well. As far as the historical aspect, and not just the historical aspect of the agricultural fairs and stuff like that, but the fairgrounds as a whole, right? The racetrack. How did this stuff come about? Obviously, it was a big deal in Petaluma at one time, and currently is for a lot of people. I think without knowing the history, a lot of people that have just moved here that could be making these decisions don't know the history of the racetrack and the fairgrounds. So I think without making any decisions, you should know the history behind what you're making those decisions on. So I think the historical aspect would be a great thing to present up front. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me. Oh, got it. All right, super. All right. Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet? Anna, I'm saying I think you haven't spoken yet. So if I can go to you.
Okay, thank you. I will agree with Jerry as well. And also, I think I can speak a little bit. I'm not very familiar, even though I'm part of the community. But I have known a lot of families, and in general, they use the fairgrounds as a gathering point for special celebrations in special achievements on their own, whatever their culture is. So that's one of the points where they gather.
Right. Super. Okay. Got that. And then before I go back to Marion and Anne, anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak yet so far, who'd like to jump in? No requirement, just making the floor available as we often do. All right, well, feel free to jump in. I'll put you first in the queue if anybody who hasn't spoken wants to go ahead. Marion, go ahead. Okay.
I'm a banker by trade. And so for me, when I make decisions, everything for me is based on cost benefit analysis. So if you're going to be looking at making changes to the fairgrounds, I think we need to see some data from the city or whoever that can tell us what the revenues are that are generated by the current occupants of the fairgrounds, and weigh that versus what potential revenues may come from changes that are made.
All right, just a second. All right. Sorry, that last thing you said, and weigh against potential revenue that may come from
whatever changes, come to whatever changes are being anticipated.
Okay, super, got that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anne, and this will be our last comment, I believe, before we have to go today.
Well, I just want to say +1 to what Marion just said. I think the financial impact on the city of whatever decisions are made is really important. And the other one I wanted to propose is I think we should understand how choices made about the fairground's future might help to redress historic inequities.
All right, let me just get that. Awesome. Was there more to your comment there? You good?
That was it.
Okay, super. Gosh, we have amazingly, actually, we could probably entertain one last comment. If someone has one last comment, you all are quite really taking that sort of speaking concisely piece to heart. I really appreciate you helping make my job as a facilitator not terrible. This has been exceptionally easy, in fact, so I really appreciate that. And yep, all right, I don't see any other hands raised, so let's close it out here. Oh, sorry, Diana.
I have one, and that is, what have other cities done in these circumstances? Can we learn something from the experiences of other small cities or large towns who have repurposed, I don't want to use the word repurposed actually, who have changed, updated, improved their fairgrounds?
Okay, super, I think I have that down. All right, awesome. Thanks very much to all of you. I realize there's a couple of things I need to say here before we go. One of them, I was reminded by a few of your comments just now that I think, I don't know whether everybody got told this in onboarding, so this is a good opportunity to tell all of you now that there are, you all have resources. You are not alone in terms of making, potentially finding presenters. This was, some of the comments made just now point to specific organizations perhaps, but some of them point to a much more nebulous kind of, we should have someone like blank. And that is very much what Tiffany is here to help you with. We have partly, we'll do it, she'll do her best to connect you, to help to connect you with sort of other folks who might be able to suggest actual names, organizations. And again, it can go onto the menu as just a someone like blank. I mean, there's no absolute restriction there, but it'll be easier for the panel if there are a few specific names that you suggest. And certainly for that first weekend, we need names in order to go out and actually get people. So we have made contact with someone at Sonoma State in their Center for Community Engagement who has agreed to help this group and eventually the panel as well connect with resources at or through the university system in terms of potential presenters there. So if there's somebody that you would like us to connect her with, she also, because of her role there at the university in connecting all different kinds of community members with university resources, also just happens to know a lot of folks out in the community, we think. And I mean, obviously, your fellow members here are the biggest resource. You all have an absolute wealth of knowledge about who is around. But when you're talking about, further afield, you may also know folks. But if you want assistance, there's one resource, and we're happy to go connect you with other resources as well to pass along a request. We'd like someone like, and can you help us try to find people like that? So I just wanted to make that known. Feel free, incidentally, to already this week, if you have a request like that, reach out directly to Tiffany at healthydemocracy.org. She has an email address now, and please CC Alex and myself as well on that too, or just feel free to send it to the two of us. It'll get directed in the right place. But if you have a request of, hey, I'd love to see somebody like blank, there is a bit of a resource there that we can help to connect you with. What else do I need to say here? I need to tell you what's happening at the next meeting. So at the next meeting, we will, so this coming week, as I said, I'll be sending out a form where you can submit unlimited numbers of entries of people, organizations, and why they're important for the panel to hear from. Spend, whatever time you are able. We appreciate your service to this committee this coming week in terms of nominating folks or types of folks using that form. We will compile that. And then next meeting, we'll spend the majority of the meeting discussing well, that list will sort of be compiled all throughout this next week. We'll be adding to it and looking at the list as it exists at that point and asking the question, who is missing? What gaps are there? Whose view is not here yet? Where are there redundancies or duplicates? Can we start to narrow down? Things may start to get categorized a bit, but there's going to be some discussion at that point. But principally around who's missing, because that's obviously the most important thing here. But also, you know, what is the sort of package of folks that we want to give to the panel for their first weekend? Yeah, and then we'll talk a bit at that next meeting about a little bit more about the voting process, which I already told you about today, but we'll just talk about that a little bit more, make sure everybody's comfortable with that system and exactly how that will work. The other thing I need to tell you here, sorry, I'm right at time, is as I think we mentioned in onboarding meetings, forgive us if we've forgotten one little piece, that's why I'm trying to repeat a few things here, is you all have been, or except for the fair and the city, the other 12 of you have been selected to some extent, whatever extent possible, represent the other folks in your category who weren't lucky enough to be selected. So again, on the Petaluma page on our website, you'll find right now down in the bottom left, although the IAC may have its own section soon, a list of respondents, other folks that were nominated in your category who weren't selected, or other organizations. We will be inviting the other folks in your category to reach out to you in case they want some input. And so if they do reach out to you, and you're able to take their views into account, you are, at the end of the day, are really representing your own organization, but we just ask that if you're able to bring some of their suggestions into the mix here, that's hopefully better for everybody. Right, so we'll talk a bit more about that, see how that's going at the next meeting. But again, no requirements, no expectations there. You've already committed plenty of time to this. Just if you can do some of that. We'll also talk at the next meeting, just a brief introduction, I think, to that background information that we've talked about a couple of times, as a statement that you'll present directly to the panel. All right, I think that's what I needed to cover, unless anyone has any questions before we hop off here. Well, you all have been lovely. Thank you so much, and appreciate you a lot, and look forward to seeing you next Monday. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye. Thanks a bunch.